Good morning from beautiful Brisbane, Australia, and welcome to Healing from Complex PTSD. My name's Linda, I'm your certified complex trauma recovery coach, and it's great to be with you today. If you're here for the first time, give a shout out and let me know where you're from, and remember to like and subscribe and share for the silent majority that still exist in this world and that are unaware that complex trauma is very real and it impacts our health, our relationships, our careers, and so much more. This morning I wanted to share with you some information about self-blame. Now, the reason I want to do this is because I got a message from a beautiful, beautiful lady, and they said to me that they just learned about fearful avoidant attachment style and that they were crying and feel so sad that they didn't understand it sooner. They said they've spent years and years on painful relationships and getting into them and then running from them, and even recently had entered into one where the other person in their relationship had very little time for them, and they said, I'm just a much older nobody. And then they said, why did I do this to myself? And that's when my heart broke. And they mentioned how incredibly painful it is. And for those of us who are in recovery from complex trauma, definitely understand how incredibly painful it is, not just the whole recovery process, but also how incredibly painful it is going through and understanding that this wasn't actually my fault, the choices I made. Now, before I get into recognizing the self-blame, I really feel in my heart to be very clear that the relationship choices you made were not your fault at all. And it's not just the typical going around social media posts of it's all about the nervous system, because it's not. Okay, the nervous system's actually connected to the brain. And what happens, especially with complex trauma, is developmental trauma in our younger years, especially 5 and under. And there can be unconscious, unprocessed memories that are non-verbal, that are images, that are sensory. So 10 months under, they're sensory. And those things can hijack us and we don't even know. And this is nowhere near talked about enough. Now, one of the ways that I knew that I used to blame myself for everything was because I apologised for everything. If I was having a conversation with someone and I felt that the conversation had gone the wrong way, I'd just apologise and say, look, I'm really sorry, it was my mistake, I must have misunderstood. Or I'd just be saying, I'm sorry. And I didn't realise that it's actually a trauma-driven response. It wasn't something that I was wanting to do consciously. However, the recovery model for complex trauma is definitely learning the trauma responses and then learning how to turn things around into recovery and adulting. And one of my clients said it to me recently when I gave them the options of what their next lot of options were. And they said, but that would mean that I have to stop what I'm doing and then I'd have to take on responsibility for where I'm going. And I said, that's right. That's what happens to us. And it's like, it's so hard to imagine. And for me, it was so hard to imagine that there was a whole different level of responsibility that I didn't know about. And because I grew up first child, highly responsible, very responsible for my younger brother, who was only 13 months younger than me, to the point where when something went wrong in class for him, they'd get me out of my class to go and comfort him instead of ring a parent. So these things can happen and they impact our developing brain. Okay, so a couple of things that we can look for when we're in the trauma response of self-blame. So I'm not talking about self-blame from a victimhood perspective at all right? I'm talking about an unconscious trauma response that we didn't know we had, or we don't know that we have, because of what's still hanging around in our brain. So let me just pull up one infographic. So I've got my first list ready for you. So when you're interacting with other people, whether it's at work, whether it's at home, whether it's just out in the public in general, you might just interact with someone. You may feel anxious. You may walk away from the experience and start crying. You may have muscle tension, or you ruminate on it and on it and on it. And so you're going over and over the conversation. You worry, you get an upset stomach. For me, I used to get migraines. You might have regrets. Okay, any of this starting to sound familiar to you? Apart from the apologising all the time. You blame yourself for every awkward interaction, and you believe that every problem that happens, it is your responsibility to work it out. So we haven't grown into emotional maturity where we understand that when two people are in the conversation, we both have to be willing to take responsibility for our own parts and have a conversation about it. And that's okay, because we never had it modelled either, all right? You believe that you deserve it whenever people lash out at you. Any negative experience deeply affects your self-esteem, okay? You're always looking for signs of disapproval. Now that can be when we're on hypervigilance, and we're just scanning the scene around us. So think about when you walk into a room and somebody's angry. They don't have to tell you that they're angry. You can scan a room and know how people are feeling. And that developed in our childhood because of the environment we lived in. And you may put everyone on a pedestal, or put them before you, put them before your needs as an adult. So when we're in the adult situation, we're able to say, I'm an adult, they're an adult, we can sit down and work this out together. These are my needs, this person has their needs, and together you work out what needs to happen. So one of the most recent ones was with my youngest son, and I think I messaged him and asked him, could he do something for me? And he was already had a full plate that day, and I didn't know, I wasn't aware. And his response to me was pretty cranky. And I was like, what the heck went on? So then I got cranky back, and I was like, what happened? But then I wouldn't talk, and that's one of my things that I'm working on. I'm learning, and we have to learn. It's skill sets that we learn. It's not read some information and change. It's learn skill sets, learn what our maladaptive behaviours are, learn strategies and structures, and beginning to recognise different facets that we can work on. So one of mine is learning how to say, I don't understand what's happened. And anyhow, my youngest, he's 23, came downstairs and said to me, what happened? What went wrong? And I said, well, I don't know, because this is how I felt when you spoke to me. And then he said, he was able to say to me then, well, this is what was happening for me. I had a full plate, and then you asking for something triggered my whole thought process, and we went into it a bit, and then we were able to resolve it. And when he told me how his thought process was, I went, don't worry, I understand completely. That used to drive me nuts too. When I had 3 kids coming at me going, I need this, I need this, I need this. And I used to implement like the rules are, right, if you need something, let me know 24 hours in advance, because there's 3 of you. So we were able to sit and resolve that together, and I've never done that again because I understand what was happening for him. But when we do these things and it's with another adult and it's mutual, then we both are willing to adapt our behaviours easily. It's not a problem. It's not like having an argument with a narcissist where you've got to do all the adapting and changing. this is two adults sitting down and working through how they perceive things and their differences. So this is why we don't have to self-blame, okay? This is how we can step into being willing to work through the adult side of things. And I want you to know, it is a trauma response. It is not something that you have developed yourself as a choice, as a way of being, okay? I really want you to understand that. And it is not your nervous system running the show, okay? These are definite things that happen that's helped us survive during our younger years. And now we need to be able to work through how to manage it in a whole different way than we've ever learnt before. Okay, thanks for joining in. And for those who are interested, the complex trauma certification is now available. The first core unit is, and the individual membership is also available. You can look at the links down below, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks for joining in, and I appreciate you very much. Bye for now.